What's going on, guys? This is Tower number 9, and we are coming to you with another Star Wars Unlimited video here. This time it is myself playing Grand Moff Tarkin versus Bargle playing Boba Fett, and we're both using Jeddah City here. So it's going to be a Cunning Tarkin versus a double yellow, double Cunning Boba. And we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to lead off with a tie LN. This is a decent play with Tarkin. You can buff it with the experience, but my opponent immediately removes it with an ISB agent. So nasty development for me. Ends up being able to clear that out. And additionally, my opponent plays Greedo. So that is a super negative start for me. Um, and we're gonna see if I can come back here and get more in control of the situation. So this turn I also don't really have a good play. I'm just gonna play Veers. My opponent probably trades Greedo for Veers here and then has the ISB agent plus whatever else he plays. But actually we see the opponent play a Waylay. I think this is a bit of a misplay. I think you just take the trade. I'm relatively happy to see my opponent waste a removal card on something that he could have just cleared on board. Then hits the base for 4. But it's possible that he's trying to go aggro here. But in this case, it ends up being really to my advantage because I end up drawing an ISB agent of my own. So ISB agent is a 1-cost 1/3 Imperial, and when you play him, you can reveal an event, and if you from your hand, and if you do, it deals 1 damage to an enemy unit. Or to a unit, I suppose you could hit your own side. So I deploy my own ISB agent, revealing an event and defeating Greedo. My opponent does get the Greedo discard, revealing an event there to deal 2 damage to a ground unit, so then his ISB agent could trade with mine. A little bit of an unlucky moment there for me, but that's how it goes sometimes. I replay Veers, and my opponent is going to bring out a cell block guard. I will then take the initiative. So here, so Veers is 3/3, as is the cell block guard. So I could just trade Veers for the cell block guard. Another thing that I could do is I could use Tarkin's ability to give Veers a +1/+1 counter, which would then mean that he could attack into the cell block guard and win. But I actually just take the trade instead. And the reason is because my opponent is playing Cunning, there's a good chance that there are some tricks. So we could see another Waylay. We could see a copy of Shoot First, allowing him to win that exchange, even if it was him at 3/3 and me at 4/4. So I just take the trade instead to preclude any of those tricks. Play out Veers. My opponent ambushes Veers with Bosk, not what I want to see here. I am going to deploy Tarkin. So my opponent here can deploy Boba, but I have a No Good to Me Dead waiting in hand, which is really a good way to resolve that. No Good to Me Dead is a card that I think one of the most impactful cards that we've seen in the recent previews, quite frankly. Really nasty card. So the way that No Good to Me Dead works is that it does it exhausts the opponent, and then they can't ready this phase, and that even apply or this round, and that even applies during the regroup phase. They don't ready at the end of the turn like they would normally, and that means that you've essentially locked them down for 2 turns. That's exactly what we see here. I play out Tarkin. My opponent deploys Boba. I play No Good to Me Dead, exhaust Boba, and then use Tarkin to defeat Bosk. So I'm still a bit behind, but I do feel like I'm making something of a comeback here. So on the current board, my opponent is ahead, but his Boba Fett is still going to be exhausted this turn. Tarkin can defeat that ISB agent, and I have some potential big plays to make here. Not necessarily the greatest plays, but potentially. One thing that I could do this turn is maybe I could ambush something with Callus and then attack with Tarkin for extra value or whatever. My opponent actually ends up using a surprise strike to have the ISB agent trade with Tarkin, so ends up defeating my leader there. His is, of course, still exhausted. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to play out Bosk to ambush Boba and stay on the board. So Bosk is a 4/5 with ambush, and additionally, when you play an event, he deals 2 damage to target unit. So in this case, we each hit each other for 4 damage, and both of us are staying on the board. But I'm hoping this is going to set up a big play for me with the overwhelming barrage that I still have in hand. So we will see how this goes. My opponent plays a 7th Fleet Defender, 3-cost 3/2 with shielded, so it comes in and gains a shield token. Or a shield token counter. I don't remember if it's called a token or a counter, but it gains a shield. And in this case, I have a really, really good response. This overwhelming barrage is going to actually take out both of these units, and the reason is So I can play Overwhelming Barrage, and I get 6 damage from Bosk. So I'll use 1 point of that damage to remove the shield. I'll use the rest to defeat Boba. And then I additionally get Bosk's ability to, when you play an event, deal 2 damage, and I'll just send that 2 damage over to the defender now that the shield is down. Because it's different sources of damage, that will actually clear it. This is kind of similar to when you play maximum firepower and hit someone with 2 different sources of damage and thereby clear out a powerful unit that would otherwise have the shield absorb it. You have like your small unit do the damage at first, and then you have the larger unit come in once the shield is cleared. So in this case, this trick is able to take down that unit. My opponent does have a no good to me dead there though to exhaust my boss, so I'm not going to be able to swing into the base for 6. End up taking the initiative here, and my opponent then plays out a Mining Guild tie. This is a 1 cost 1/2. But when it attacks, you can spend 2 resources to draw a card. Actually, a quite good card in this situation because my opponent is struggling with cards in hand. This is sort of a so this deck that my opponent is playing is a Boba deck that has a lot of cheap things. I think this is actually a quite strong way to play Boba because it means that you're very likely going to be getting value out of Boba's ability. The downside to the large number of cheap things is that it does mean that sometimes you have trouble with having enough cards. So cards like the Mining Guild tie, which can draw a card for 2 resources, are quite useful here. And yeah, we see my opponent attacking for only 1 damage, but he does spend 2 to draw a card. I played Colonel Yularen, healing my base for 1. So in this situation, I'm kind of trying to slow roll it in the hopes of getting a good Callus ambush. I use Tarkin's ability to buff Yularen. My opponent plays another ISB agent, revealing an event and killing Bosk, and he actually makes a bit of a mistake here. I didn't catch this at the time, but he discards the event that he revealed. You actually put it back to hand. So he should still have that no good to me dead in hand. Unfortunately, I didn't catch this at the time, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Um, I play out the 7th Fleet Defender of my own for that 3/2 with a shield, hoping to use that to take down the Mining Guild tie. Here my opponent's sort of considering the options. So right now I am down by 5 hit points on the base, but I have gained an advantage on the board because so if we look at the board right now, Colonel Yularen trades favorably with that ISB agent. The 7th Fleet Defender trades favorably with the Mining Guild tie. So in both those cases, I can kill the enemy unit and stay on the board, just taking a bit of damage or losing my shield in the case of the defender. And so with that situation, I'm feeling pretty good about where the game is at present. But we're going to have to see how it goes. I do also only have 1 card in hand, which is not really where I want to be, but hopefully I'm going to be able to defeat a unique unit with Callus, and by that method, draw more cards. Callus is a pretty strong card draw card. I do also have Grand Moff Tarkin the unit in this deck to provide some additional card draw if need be. My opponent plays another Mining Guild tie, and I'm going to take the initiative. So I draw a no good to me dead and a shoot first. Not what I most want to see here, quite frankly. I'm going to just lead off by having my defender take down one of those Mining Guild ties, losing its shield. This is an interesting situation now because my defender has 2 HP, which is enough to survive an attack from that Mining Guild tie and defeat it. But there is that risk that my opponent's going to have a copy of Shoot First or some other card that will cause a problem. So my opponent actually plays a copy of Cunning here, so you get to choose 2 effects. You can return a unit with power 4 or less to the owner's hand. You can exhaust up to 2 units. You can give a unit +4/+0, and you can make the opponent do a random discard. In this case, my opponent opts to return Yularen and give +4 to that Mining Guild tie. I replay the Yularen, which actually allows me to heal again. And my opponent hits the base with the Mining Guild tie. A bit of a surprise. It would seem to me that that would be a good opportunity to take the trade, but ends up going for the base. Does do 5 damage there, and does pay the 2 for an additional card draw. I'm then going to play Agent Callus, attacking and defeating the ISB agent with ambush. That doesn't draw me a card, but it does pick off a unit. I do also get to heal 1 from Colonel Yularen there, but I think I may have missed the trigger. So Callus is a command unit, so would heal 1 from Yularen. I think I remember it now, and my opponent generously allows me to have it. So gotta keep your eye on those for later. So 1 HP on Yularen there. And we're going to move to the next. We're going to move to the next round. Colonel Yularen's healing is quite useful across the course of a game. I think so. I think I've healed 3 HP so far, and I think I may do more healing as the game progresses. Just having that ability to get more HP on your base can be really important if the opponent is playing aggressively. So in this situation, I still have a substantial board advantage. I used Tarkin's ability to give an experience to my defender there, and the reason that I chose the defender to be the target of that is that I wanted it to be out of range of a potential shoot first from the mining guild tie. So once it has that one experience, it can now no longer be taken down by a simple shoot first. My opponent plays a change of heart to gain control of Agent Callus. This is a solid play for my opponent because Callus can now defeat Yularen and actually draw my opponent a card, which is quite annoying. I make a bit of a mistake here. So there are two things that I could have done here that would have been better. So having the defender kill the mining guild tie is a fine play. It's a totally reasonable play. But if I had played out my super laser technician first, I would have healed an additional point of HP on my base because Yularen would still be in play. Alternatively, I think that what I really should have done there is used Jeddah City to give Callus -4. So with Callus at -4, that would create a situation where the with Callus at -4, that would create a situation where he could no longer attack and defeat Yularen. So my Yularen would stay on the board. He could still attack into Yularen to have Yularen deal damage to him and lower the hit points on my copy of Callus. So that would be something, but it would still be a less favorable situation. So I kind of missed an opportunity there. Okay, so I have my Super Laser Technician defeat Greedo. This gives me a card draw from Callus. Unfortunately, my opponent once again hits the Greedo top deck, allowing him to defeat the damaged Callus there. A bit unfortunate for me, but that's how it goes sometimes. So Greedo's ability is when he's defeated, you can choose to discard your top card. And if it is not a unit, you can deal 2 damage to a ground unit. And so most decks are on something like 10 to 20 non-units between upgrades and events. So at 10, you have, in a 50 card deck, you have a 20% hit chance. At 20, you have a 40% hit chance. So it's something like that, 20 to 40 in most builds. Now, you might have a build that has a lot more events just for whatever reason. Maybe you're trying to go for that synergy. Maybe you just like playing more events. But generally speaking, Rito is going to be about a 20 to 40% hit chance. Okay, so in this situation, I play Grand Moff Tarkin the unit here, and I search for Imperials, end up drawing another Tarkin and a copy of General Veers again. Okay, so my opponent brings out the Fet's Fire Spray, and I'm going to answer it with the old No Good to Me Dead. Fed's Fire Spray is a very powerful unit, 6 cost 5/6 in the space arena. And if you control Boba Fett or Jango Fett as a leader or unit, it comes into play ready. So being able to deploy a unit like that ready is very, very strong. And so it's kind of a staple for these Boba Fett decks, in my opinion. However, in this case, I was able to counter it with the No Good to Me Dead, so it would have been ready, but instead it was exhausted and will be exhausted next turn as well. I play out Veers, and I have my defender defeat that tie. It remains in play because it's buffed by Veers. Now, one note about the Fet's Fire Spray is it does also have a 2 resource ability that doesn't require it to exhaust, and it exhausts an enemy non-unique unit. Now, this ability is not as good as it seems. In general, so many units in this game are unique that things that only work on non-unique units are really not so good. So like for an example, right now my entire ground arena is unique. I have Thrawn and I have Veers. Both of them are unique. Maybe I'm going to play out Colonel Yularen. He's also unique. On the other hand, it could be used on my Seventh Fleet Defender. That's not unique. So there are at least some targets. In this case, my opponent gets a really high value Cunning play. So he used it to return Veers to hand, which actually defeats that defender because it loses the +1/+1 that was keeping it alive, and additionally exhausts Tarkin there. I'm going to replay Veers. So 3/3 gives other Imperials +1/+1. My opponent plays out the Cell Block Guard. I'm going to play a TIE LN, kind of a classic unit, just a 2/1. Right now, the main thing that I'm worried about is I have been drawing a lot of small stuff and then events. I would like to see some of my bigger units. I would like to see some stuff that can contest the board more aggressively here. Um, think I might have seen a copy of Agent Callus with Thrawn, but not taken it. Um, or I'm sorry, I said Thrawn, I meant Tarkin. But I'm not sure. And that's a difficult situation, I think, knowing what the best cards to pick with Tarkin is. On the other hand, I do have another Tarkin, but if you look at my hand, there's just so many events and small things. And in this case, all those uniques that I was talking about are actually a downside because the only additional units that I can play here are actually both unique. I have another copy of Tarkin and I have another copy of Yularen, not what I really want to see. Unique in this game is often not a downside very much because it protects you from certain effects. And unique units tend to have good stats, but if you do draw multiple copies of the same uniques as I have here, it can be a little bit clumsy. Whereas if if those were, let's say instead of Yularen, I was playing like Seasoned Shore Trooper, and I had two Seasoned Shore Troopers, yeah, sure, just play the second one, why not? So I'm going to use Tarkin's ability here to give an experience counter to my tie. My opponent then actually uses the Fire Spray ability to exhaust the tie, the two resource ability that I was talking about earlier. Um, I'm going to play a shoot first and have Yularen take out my opponent's cell block guard there. My opponent hits me for 5, and this is a really not very good situation for me, quite frankly. Um, I'm going to swing in with Tarkin for another 2 damage. I do have these barrages. I have another Tarkin. I have another Yularen. My opponent plays Boba Disintegrator here. Also not something I'm super thrilled to see. Very efficient 3-cost unit. 3/5, and with a strong ability. So really above curve. Um, One of the strongest 3 drops in the game. So I think in my opinion, if I were to do a like top 5 3 drops, I can say the first 4 very easily, and I'm not sure about the fifth one. The first 4 would be Boba Disintegrator, Millennium Falcon, Wing Leader, and Super Laser Technician. And I don't know what that fifth one would be, but those 4 seem kind of head and shoulders above a lot of the other units. And of those, Boba Disintegrator is the most like direct fighting power of that group, where Wing Leader is more of a support that's really good. Maybe the fifth one right now would be Fleet Lieutenant. I think Fleet Lieutenant's really good, but I think it's not quite in the same tier, maybe. Okay, so I end up playing another Boba or another Tarkin to overwrite my existing Tarkin. So I just take the unique penalty because I want to get the extra cards. And then I'm going to play an ISB agent, and I erroneously exhaust 2 resources here, and I'm not actually sure if I showed my opponent the shoot first. I might have just said it. We don't have the audio here, we just have the video. But my apologies to my opponent if I didn't actually show that card. It looked like I moused over it at least briefly, but not that I dragged it out. I may have said it. I may have said it on the mic though. I certainly hope that I did because you do have to show a resource for that. So the reason that I did 1 damage to the fire spray is to get it closer to a position where I can defeat it. Um, my opponent plays a surprise strike, hitting my base for 8 damage, and I am in desperate straits now. Only 4 life to my opponent's 21. So in this situation, I need to remove Boba Disintegrator because if my opponent has a shoot first or another surprise strike, he can win the game immediately. So what I do is I play out Overwhelming Barrage on my tie. So the tie is currently a 3/2, but it gets +2/+2, goes up to a 5/4, then deals damage equal to its power. That's exactly the 5 damage that I need to take down Boba Fett. So then we're going to see also the +2/+2 now puts my tie into a position where I can potentially trade with that fire spray, which is really favorable for me. I really have to deal with that fire spray because another attack from it would actually end the game. So my opponent then plays a copy of ISB Agent, but doesn't have an event to show, I believe, or just doesn't think that it's valuable to show the event and would rather hold that back in hand. I have the buffed tie trade with the fire spray using the bonus stats that I had from the overwhelming barrage. My opponent then brings out a Viper Probe Droid, gets a chance to see my hand, so I have a shoot first, another overwhelming barrage, Colonel Yularen, a copy of Relentless, No Good to Me Dead, and a basic tie LN. And in this situation, I'm definitely behind on life. I'm far behind on life, in fact, but I have a really favorable situation when it comes to card advantage and current board, and I'm going to try to play conservatively and use those advantages in order to get the win. Let's see if I can do it. So I traded there with Colonel Yularian, and the reason that I did that is I have that other Colonel Yularian in hand. So by having Yularian be the unit that I trade with that probe droid instead of Tarkin, that means I can play this Yularian without losing anything, and the one life that I gain from playing Yularian is actually really impactful at this time. Because I'm so low on life, I like every little bit of life is something that I'm desperate for. So my opponent then plays a TIE LN. I'm going to use my ground units there to defeat the ISB agent. My opponent, I believe, takes the initiative, so then I'm going to play Yularen that will heal my base for 1. At 5 HP, though, I am still dead if my opponent surprise strikes me with that tie. So I'm then going to play a tie of my own, and then I actually use the no good to me dead just to keep that other tie exhausted, because I do not want that other tie to surprise strike me and win the game. You have to kind of be in these sorts of situations, you might be kind of desperate and you have to be aware of your outs and like how your opponent can win the game and how you can prevent that. So I'm trying to just ensure that my opponent doesn't get an opportunity. Like maybe they don't have the surprise strike, but I don't want to count on them not having the right card. I want to be prepared for them even if they do have it. Another Viper Probe Droid comes out, looking at my hand again, showing Relentless, a Emperor's Royal Guard, Shoot First, and Overwhelming Barrage. In this situation, I am going to play out the Emperor's Royal Guard, I believe, which is going to heal my base for an additional 1, which I'm very happy to see. That now takes me out of range of a surprise strike from that tie. And additionally, it provides me with a ground sentinel, which is going to make my ground arena substantially more secure. As I have several officials. So Emperor's Royal Guard is a 3/4 that gains the Sentinel keyword as long as you have an official in play. So Tarkin and Yolarian are both officials. The ISB agent is actually not. And in this situation, I take the trade with Tarkin for that probe droid. I still have Yolarian and the ISB agent, and I then have 8 resources, but believe it or not, I can't do anything with them because Relentless actually costs 9. I'm not sure. I might have miscounted it and thought that I could have played both Relentless and the Royal Guard this turn. I'm not actually sure, but I do end up with a fair few resources unused. I'm going to use one of those resources here to activate Tarkin's ability and give Yularen an experience. The reason I did this on Yularen instead of the Royal Guard is that first, Yularen has yet to attack, so this is going to allow me to do 1 more damage to my opponent this turn. But then secondly, Yularen is my source of healing, which is very important right now. I'm trying to make it harder for my opponent to remove him so that I can keep hitting those heals and get out of range of a potential surprise strike or a potential Fet's Fire Spray or whatever. I need to try and get into a safer spot. My opponent ambushes the Emperor's Royal Guard with Boss, because that does defeat him, dealing, I believe, and the Royal Guard deals 3 damage back. So in that case, if I had given the experience token to the Royal Guard instead of Yularen, it probably would have been better for me because Boss would not be able to defeat that Royal Guard in 1 attack. And additionally, if he took 4 damage back, he would be in a position where the ISB agent could just remove him with 1 shot. However, we're going to now try and go about that the other way. I'm going to use Tarkin's ability to give an experience to the ISB agent directly, and that is going to allow the ISB agent to trade with Bosk. My opponent plays a 7th Fleet Defender. This is very dangerous because once again he's in that surprise strike to win the game territory, and because it has that shield, I can't remove it with the overwhelming barrage. So I take the trade there with the ISB agent and Bosk. I believe my opponent takes the initiative, and luckily for me, I have a Relentless to play here. So Relentless has 2 huge advantages. So first off, so it's an 8/8 ship that blocks the first event that your opponent would play each turn. The first event that your opponent would play just doesn't do anything, or its text is blank. It would still trigger like Bosk's ability, I believe. So first off, this now means my opponent can't play Surprise Strike as the first card. It can't be done because it would be blocked by Relentless. So it's going to give me more time to come up with a counter to that defender. And then the second really good benefit is that it is actually another command card for Colonel Yularian. So playing it heals my base an additional 1, putting me at 7 life and getting me out of range of the surprise strike in an additional way. So my opponent does have this defender still on the board, and is going to swing into the base for 3 damage here, which is going to be a substantial chunk of my remaining life. I think at this point, if not for the life gain from my copies of Colonel Yularen across this game, I would have actually lost at this point because I think I've healed 4 or more life by now. I have my Relentless swing into the defender to clear its shield. Not a super efficient move, but I want to make sure that I can remove this unit before it potentially hits me again. This is going, by removing that shield, I'm now in a position where I'm going to be able to play the overwhelming barrage that I have in hand to clear out Relentless. My opponent plays a, what is that? That is a surprise strike that does nothing. Um, so this is being played here just to allow my opponent to play a different event that is hopefully going to be more impactful. Plays the surprise strike to no avail in order to use up Relentless's ability. Then plays an I am your father, targeting Relentless, so 7 damage would defeat Relentless. So here I actually have an interesting choice. I could just let Relentless die and then replay my other Relentless from hand, but I end up deciding that I want to keep this one. I want to keep this one in play, so I let my opponent have the card draw. I'm not actually sure if that was correct. I got to think about that more, maybe. So then I play a 7th Fleet Defender. My opponent was going to play Boba Disintegrator, but then remembered that I have that overwhelming barrage and I would be able to clear it out, and decides that it's time to play a weaker unit instead so that I'm not getting as much value from the potential barrage if I do play it. Ends up playing, I believe it ends up being a cell block guard here. Um, Yeah, thinking about Boba Disintegrator again, tough choice for my opponent. Ends up being the cell block guard. So then what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use the overwhelming barrage, but instead of playing it on on Relentless, which would give me more damage, I'm going to actually play it on Colonel Yularian here because I only need a smaller amount of damage to clear out my opponent's board. And by playing it on Yularian, the +2/+2 is going to allow me to hit the enemy base more strongly. So then those units are both cleared. I believe my opponent is then going to just take the initiative. And then I can attack with Yularen for 6 damage to the base, which then means that I am in position for a one-hit kill with the Relentless there. I actually used Tarkin's ability first, which is a good play, so that's going to give me an additional point of damage. And so it ends up being Or okay, yeah, that is 6 damage. It would have been 5 earlier. I only had 1 experience rather than 2, I believe. So now at 8 life, Relentless is in position to win the game in 1 attack, and there's nothing my opponent can do about it. So the thing about Relentless is because it blocks that first event, even though my opponent has the initiative, even if they had a waylay or a change of heart would be crushing here in a world where Relentless wouldn't block it. But because Relentless blocks it, that waylay or change of heart, even if my opponent has it, they can't stop Relentless in one action, and that means Relentless is going to be able to attack into the enemy base and win the game. So yeah, that was a big comeback. I had a very negative start with the opponent clearing my tie and playing out Greedo on that first turn, and then I got very close to being defeated, but ultimately was able to stabilize the situation, come back, and win. So exciting game there. Also, this was a long game, and despite that, this was not nowhere near the length of some games. So like as Star Wars Unlimited games go, this one was quite long and back and forth. But I'm looking at the thing now and it's like 28 minutes and a bit into the video. Like this was a extended match and it was less than half an hour. As someone who's played a lot of games that take longer times to just play, so that's been both other card games. So like some of Fantasy Flight's LCGs are much more time consuming. So a game of Conquest or L5R could easily take like 45 minutes or an hour. Flesh and Blood, same thing. Some games are fast in Flesh and Blood, but some games, again, you can easily have an hour-long game in Fab with certain matchups and having to make a bunch of decisions and so on. So having a game where like a very long game ends up being less than half an hour is really cool. And it also means that with the faster play speed of Star Wars Unlimited compared to some games, we are going to be able to do 2 out of 3s in competitive play. And that's something that is really, really good for me. I'm very happy to hear that because the 2 out of 3 format allows you to have a lot less variance and a lot of opportunities for sort of outplaying your opponent, not being taken by surprise by kind of gimmicky cards or whatever. And it also allows you to do Magic the Gathering style sideboarding, where you have a sideboard of additional cards that you can substitute into your deck in between the rounds. So let's say I have my base deck round 1, I get my butt kicked. Then going into round 2, I have those cards that I can potentially swap out to try to counter what my opponent's doing a little more efficiently. So that's going to be something that I think is very positive for the game. And yeah, all right, that's going to about do it for this one, guys. Thanks to you all for watching. I'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I am also going to link in the video description below to the introductory article that I posted over at the Fifth Trooper blog. And I should have another article being published over at the Fifth Trooper quite soon. So stay tuned for that as well. Additionally, there's going to be a tournament tomorrow. I do intend to play in that tournament. I say tomorrow. Tomorrow, as of this video recording, I believe the tournament is going to be on Saturday, the 18th, and I am hoping to play in that tournament. I have registered for it. There's a chance that I'm going to be in a place that has bad internet out here in the Czech Republic, so there is a chance that my connection won't be up to playing in the tournament. I certainly hope, though, that I will end up having that chance to participate. And if so, I'm hoping to record my games and we can maybe go through and show some of that sideboarding process in those 2 out of 3s and so on, and kind of have a first look at what competitive play might look like. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first tournament being played in this game. It is a bit premature since we only have like half the cards, but there's also enough card pool to have interesting deck building and choices. So I'm going to be excited for that. Stay tuned for more on that front, and I'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. Thanks for watching, guys.